Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Recently, what I have recently, one of my senior level developer did some interview with a company. So that the question that they had, because they would like to hire a full-fledged software engineer, as mainly a .NET developer, they would like to know the C# skill that developer has, So they have some very interesting problem. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video tutorial on how we're going to solve that problem. So the problem was something like this. What they had was a text file. This text file contains this something called ICD-10. If you work in a healthcare industry, these are like corresponding. It is a very common to because up to recently we have ICD-9 code, and a lot of companies in the process of transitioning into ICD-10 code. So what they had was a text file basically. So here in this example here, we have ICD-10 code. This is the code and this is corresponding description of the code. So requirement was pretty remember this is an interview question. When after the you successfully do a phone interview, then the company asks you to come into their place and do a live coding. This is very standard practice, at least in the United States. I mean, in most of the companies, because you don't want somebody just knows theoretically, but they want to make sure the person knows how to do coding. So this was the challenge that they had to work on. So the idea was like you have this. So what they wanted to have, you have a text file. You're going to write C# code, convert this into a SQL statement, and then you're going to create. You're going to store all this information into your into the SQL Server backend database, not by processing it first, right? Because you need a text file, you need to parse the data using C#, and then eventually create a SQL statement or something. So this is your requirement, and of course now you have a Visual Studio 2015, and this is where you're going to write your code. And at the same time, they want to know that you know how to create table and all those pieces of information. Okay, let's see how we would solve a problem like this. And to start with, they have also a database already been created. Right now, I'm using a SQL Express here, just a free SQL Express database from Microsoft here, right? So they have a table created. So very first thing, how are we going to start? Because there is a reason they're asking this question, because by asking this question, they know the person knows about database, how to create table, how to persist the data into backend database, or so this is a challenge that we have to solve live coding, in front of all those people. So very first thing I would, this is the text file here. Maybe one thing we can do here, so basically I'm thinking, this is text file. I can just copy the whole text into, let's go ahead and create this is my first approach. I'm going to create a little class here called a data reader or something. So since this is about ICD-10 code parsing and stuff, I'm going to give it a class called ICD-10 parser or something. ICD-10 data reader, because this is going to be a very simple reader. Okay, this is my class. I'm going to make this as a static class here, and then into this I want to say get file or something. For static, just going to return a string and I'm going to say get data. This is my first approach. Of course, there could be other way we can do, but what I'm thinking is something like this. So I'm going to store all my data from the file into this class. I'm going to say return, and then give sequence character for C#. So I'm going to come in here and then basically copy this one. I'm going to read this. Okay, so this is if you guys don't know what this character does, I mean, especially if you're like, beginner to C#, this is very important character. This is called, let's say, because we have this, first of all, this allows us to have our text in multiple lines. At the same time, it works as a if we have to retain the format and everything, it provides that functionality to us. Okay, I'm thinking something like this. So now we have a class that can gives us this data string, this huge amount of data, chunk of data. Even before that, let's see, let's think about this one in terms of let's create kind of like a table to store this data. This is going to be the code, ICD-10 code, and this is going to be a description, this whole text. So based on that, perhaps I want to create a table here. Since they have already given the database for us to use it, the reason they provided this database, they want to see whether the applicant, interviewee actually knows how to. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new table. And let's go ahead and create a table called ICD-10 codes or something like that. And it's always good practice to have the primary key in table. Let's give it primary key ID, integer, not null, and make it identity column. Identity. Oops. And it's good. Let's make it a primary key also. It's a primary key. That's our ID of that table. And based on the information, we need to store two pieces of information: code and description. So I'm going to define this. The name of the code. Let's say code. It could be nbar char. And based on this information right here, I don't know, I can declare maybe 20 characters. Of course, this is very important because you have to understand before you can declare that column, because you want to make sure you have enough space to store all the code. So I'm going to go ahead and make 20. It has to be not null. We need to have that value, and we also want description. Description, let's keep this as a nbar char also. Maybe up to 255 characters. Okay, this is our table. Let's go ahead and execute this one. All right, now we are basically trying to solve this problem incrementally. Now we have a table in our database. Here is our ICD-10 code just we created. Okay, so the idea, the whole problem is basically converting the text data that we have into SQL statement and insert that into a table. The one approach I'm thinking of is, let's say now I'm going to create another static class here. Let's say data parser, ICD-9 data parser, ICD-10 data. That's what it is, ICD-10 data parser, right? This is also, let's create all of them are like a static classes. We don't have to create instance or anything. And then I'm going to create a public method called void, because this method would be consumed by the our main class or whatever. It's going to be a public static void method here. I'm going to say parse. And it doesn't take any parameter. Okay, this is where we're going to write our implementation. When you of course, when you are in the interview, you are not that relaxed as you are just as I am right now, because I'm recording this video, in my room, nobody's there, but of course, a lot of people, well, some interviewees watching and how you code, all those things are being observed, because they are, they are trying to hire you, because they have to pay a lot of money, because going through all this process interview is time consuming and company needs to pay money. So anyway, now remember we have this ICD data parser. I'm going to say, okay, var ICD. Since the whole theme is about ICD-10, I can declare a variable ICD-10 codes. So I can do something like this, and I'm going to say ICD-10 data reader, and remember we defined a method called get data. So this method gives all the data from us and then to assign to this variable. Now we have a data. Now we have the line of text. So basically what we can do, we can convert the line of text into an array. So maybe just say records. I'm going to come in here, ICD code, and I'm going to basically call the split method. And the way I'm going to split, of course, I'm going to use a carriage return and end of the line. That way it would split on each line. And of course, you have to say 2-character array or something. Unless you put a single quote, you put a single quote in there. And then when you split, and then one more thing I would like to do, like when you do this one, some of the entry might be empty. We don't really care about empty, so you can say it has a second option, the second overload, string split option. Remove empty entries. This way we don't have to deal with any empty entries, okay? So we got an array of data. So we have this is more like a records, I mean, I'm going to say, rename this one as a record lines. Okay. Now, so what we have done so far is basically we are reading our data from our data reader, all this line, and then if any of those entries are empty, we are basically escaping them. So we have this array of data here. Okay, so at the same time, because we started, usually when in real life, if I had to write this one, of course, I would have a unit test and making sure our unit test passes before even writing any extra code. But right now we know it has so I can do, if the records length is greater than 0, this would assures me that they are actual records. I would do that just for a sanity. It's always a good idea to write a defensive code, right? So I can do something like that. Now if there are data, so now I can do for each line in record lines. I'm going to go basically here in this code, I'm basically going through one line at a time and trying to iterate through entire ICD-10 code, okay? So now what I'm thinking right here, because we need to separate these two pieces of information out. This one is a code we just care about here, and this is the second piece of information in the given line. So how do we can do something like, we can use the space here to split, but like the way I'm thinking, like I can use a substring. Let's say this one has a 4-character. If I go down here along the way, the maximum code that maybe, I don't know. Well, even better, I'm using this text editor called Notepad++. Into here, if you put it will tell you how many, let's say starting from there, I'm basically looking for how many, total number of columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 here. So for the first record, I can use a substring method, and I can read all the character from 0 to 8, and then remaining character, basically I can read from 8 to all of them are remaining. So let's write the code. Let me show you what I mean. So here I can say, okay, bar is a code. What I'm going to do here is the first line, and I'm going to call substring method here. Into that substring method, I'm going to start reading from 0 to 8. So basically, I'm going to starting from all those characters, starting from 0 to 8 character, which basically looks like all the code. And then this is very you have to keep in mind, like, when you parse something like this, when you put 8 characters right here, some of them 8 characters could be empty. So here it kind of makes sense to call trim method. I'm going to trim this one here and call trim method. Remember, this is a very fast implementation. Of course, we can write the same implementation very succinctly, very so maybe in one or two line. I'll show you that later using Lambda expression. Okay, this is a very I would say implementation, let's say, as if the Lambda expression or link to SQL doesn't really exist. Okay, so here is that. So I have a code, and maybe I will say a description. So description, I'm also call substring method, but I'm gonna start reading from starting from the 8th character and going in as many characters as there are. But however, this one, since I'm starting from 0, I'm not going to read up to 8 characters. I'm going to say 7. Starting from 0 to 7 is 8 characters. And this is going to be my second. So I'm in the loop. I'm reading line by line. On each line, I'm basically breaking the data into code and description and assign those values into these two variables, code and description. Remember, our goal is to basically create some sort of SQL statement. And then, let's say I'm thinking something, I'm going to use a string builder here. And you say a SQL script build. So what I'm thinking is basically I'm going to convert each line into a SQL insert statement and then basically run that script as a batch into my SQL Server database. That is one idea. Of course, you can solve in so many different ways. All right. So here, basically, I can do something like string. Well, we have a SQL builder here, and we can call append line, and then we can call a string dot format and write SQL here, something like select. Oh, I'm gonna say yeah, select. This is our first placeholder for the code, and maybe the second one for the description. Okay, select that, and I want to say, I don't know, you guys have used this union all operator in SQL, like when you have to insert multiple record. This is really cool feature, union all. If you guys, well, it's not really about SQL, but if you need to use a union versus union all, distinction is that if you have like a duplicate record, union would complain, hey, you got duplicate, but like if you have a union all, doesn't really complain about union. So and of course we need to, our placeholder can be code and it's going to be a description, something like that. So if everything is good, then we should have, by the time we come out from this loop, it should have created a SQL statement for us, right? So maybe just for now, let's say a SQL scripts. Maybe, maybe once you are done, maybe you're going to write that script into a file, and then maybe from the file, once you have file, you can do whatever. Maybe you can give that script to DBA, or that's how it works in real life, right? When you in real company. So here's our SQL builder. From that one, you say a string. Okay, so now what we have is, I think at this point we are actually ready to test our code. This is a very simple, implementation, fast implementation. Very, we can of course make it our coder. We can make it our code better by refactoring it, or maybe, okay. So let's go ahead and go into a main, and then let's call our method. Let's see how it goes. We might have introduced a lot of bug, a lot of exception here. Let's see. Here is a parser, a static class, and it has a method called parse. To test, this is all we have to do, right? So I'm going to debug this one here just for now. Let's see, it can't even get those data. Okay. All right, let's do let's go here. Oh, wow, it just, there is no exception or nothing, but I actually wanted to do shift 11. I want to actually debug it. I want to put the breakpoint in somewhere else. I want to put a breakpoint into right here so that I can actually see the, let's put a breakpoint right into this one. Oh, let's see, what is this right here? Okay, so it is, now it created, select, this is the code, and then this is the, so now we have a SQL, basically. A SQL is ready. So basically now we have our table, we have our data to insert into a table. But of course, maybe you want to write this data into a file. Just to prove that this should work, let's see, I'm going to grab some data here, maybe just few, copy this one, and then I'm going to go into my a database here. We have, remember we create a table, so I'm going to say insert into this table here, and then we basically select, right, those, and of course the last union you have to get rid of this one, and let's see, try to execute this one, if whether we can add this data into a database. Awesome, it worked. It says 20 rows were affected. Let's query our table and see, verify. Oops. Get rid of this one. Select everything from this table. Okay, all those data as you can see, all those data is basically now persisted. Not all the data right now, just for this, I just persisted 10, 10 or 20 of those. But if you want to persist all those, I don't know, maybe 74,000 or whatever, you want to basically want to save this data into it somewhere in your file system. Okay. But however, this code is okay, it works, but we don't, just to be able to do that, we don't have to write this much code. I'm going to write the second version using the, let's see, even in here, let's create a little method here, static void parse using Lambda, because we love our Lambda and link to SQL, all those cool feature. So in here, I should be able to do in one line of code. Of course, we need this one here, right? This would give us all our data. And then, all we have to do now is we need to say, of course, I have to split it here. Maybe, just for, we can use this, we can use this format also for splitting the data. If you have, well, that is just if you have one character, so I'm going to use the double quote version of the split here, the same one, and then two character array, and we're gonna, if there is no int, we're gonna remove the string. We're gonna remove the empty entry just like before. So now like if you, now once we have the array we can do something like this. We can grab a projection here, select, I'm not really I'm assuming here you guys are, familiar with the Lambda expression. I will have a separate course about Lambda expression and everything, but I'm basically from this array, I'm trying to grab some sort of projection. The projection I need basically here is, let's say, is some Lambda here. I'm going to say new. Let's define a new object here. This new object, new anonymous object, will have a two piece of information like a key gonna come out from item, like basically I'm trying to grab the basically the same this piece of code here. Okay, so I'm gonna say a substring. I'm grabbing the 8 characters for the key, and maybe I want to say a value for the second, and then I'm gonna grab the remaining characters, this piece of information here. Okay, so something like this. Well, of course, not item. Okay, now once that is all done, we can grab, this is our Lambda expression. We can write another projection for this. I'm going to say we can have another projection. In this case, what we want is something like this. We're going to, let's say, this item, it's going to be basically this guy right here. Yeah, we can do, of course, right? It doesn't know what the code and description is. It's going to come out from our item. This case, this item has a property called key right here. And then for the description, of course, it's going to be the second parameter, item.value. And since we would like to have this as a string, so what we can do is we can just define a string variable, let's say a data for now, and then we can say string. It's a beautiful method called join method here. The how we want to join, maybe by on each line, right? Maybe we can say this is where we want to join, and this guy what are we missing? Okay, here is the, oh, it doesn't join, it doesn't like string dot, let's see, can I join like this? If I do, but like I will have like whole long line of text, but I don't like something like that. Okay, the char is return and end of the line. Am I missing one more? Yep. Okay. Okay, this whole code right here, basically we can write in like one Lambda expression. This whole code does, this one line of code does exactly the same. Well, it's a one, I wouldn't say one line of code, because the one statement is corresponding to all the code that we have here. So just to verify, let's see. Can I say console.write line? Let's see. There's a lot of writing in a console, but let's see if first this works. Okay. We can basically, and then I'm just gonna say Here, go into program. Instead of calling parse method, I'm going to call the second method that we just exposed, parse using Lambda. And once all is done, I'll just maybe wait a little bit, right? Read key or something. Read line. So it's going to wait for you to enter something so that we can verify it work or not. Ooh, this is awesome. Okay, if you can do something like this in the interview, I'm pretty sure you would get hired. You should be. But I mean, like, even like people don't really expect you to know Lambda. If you can write the first version of the code, meaning you could write this code, this is also fine because you can debug it. But like, if you write like this, it knows you've been programming for a while. You're really up to date with the C#, and you know your Lambda expression. This is kind of cool. So I thought this was a really good code, good piece of interview question, like, because it not only tested you into whether you know how to write code in C#, whether you have this ability to break the problem into different kind of pieces and try to solve the problem. And so that if you do something, if you're assuming you did something like that, the chances, I couldn't say like they would hire you, but there could be so many other reasons that they might not like to hire you. But like in terms of technology, whatever you need to know, I think you pass the exam. Anyway, guys, that is what I wanted to share with you guys. Anyway, it's always a good idea to. I hope somebody, if you encounter encounter a problem like this, I hope it give you some ideas. Thank you so much for watching videos, guys.